Hello, everyone, and welcome to the APT Cyber and Cybersecurity LinkedIn Live event. My name is Alexandru Mavro, or Alexandru Mavrodina, however you want to call me, and I'm joined by my special co-host, Durs Hernandez. Today's session is the modern CISO, translating cyber risk into business value. Cyber leaders are expected to explain risk in plain language, drive smart investment decisions, and prove impact without drawing excess in technical detail. So this won't be a security theater talk. We are going to get concrete. How you frame risk, how you pick metrics, how you influence decisions. Our guest is Antonio Bovoso, Vice President and Head of Cybersecurity at Sage Therapeutics and a board advisor to Buck Crowd. Antonio has 25 years, or more than 25 years, please correct me over here, Antonio, across organizations.
We're 27 now, but we're not counting anymore.
Yeah, so including Deloitte, Hewlett Packard, IBM, and Bank of America. And he holds he holds an MBA from University of Southern California. Antonio, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Also, I would like to address my first question. Your career spans consulting large enterprises and now biopharma. What one lessons did you learn the hard way about executive decision making most security leaders learn too late?
Yes. Let me just add one thing. Sage Therapeutics was sold, so I am consulting now. So that's a piece of it. One of the things I'm doing now is I am on the advisory boards of 3 companies. I also work with 2 different venture capitalists to help them.
Okay.
Cybersecurity startups. So another round out of my career. But in answer to your question, I spent years really believing that I needed to make leadership understand cyber. And while that is somewhat true, I didn't understand the business I was in. And I often looked at them and said, they don't understand, bang my head against the wall when they didn't understand what a vulnerability was, even though I explained it before. And really kind of woke up one day after a conversation with somebody in the, digital enablement space about, well, what does the company do, right? Do I understand their function to the level I expect them to understand mine? How does the company generate revenue, right? What are the blockers in there? And when you're talking to executives and you're presenting at the CEO's direct meeting or something like that, well, there were 7 other people in there before you or after you with their main things that they needed money for or needed people to address, and you're a spoke in that. So how do you fit into it versus saying you're the most important thing and I need this? And translating that and really beginning to think about that as part of my message really allowed me to them to better understand me.
Okay. What would you do differently in your first 90 days if you restarted as a CISO today, for example?
Differently. So that's a great question. I think that it can't always be exactly the same thing. And in today's world, companies are so fluid and so fast that you really need to take this on a case by case basis. I kind of had a playbook before that said, I will come in, I will map you to NIST, I will do this, I will do that. And I think what I would do differently this time around is I would spend time with the leadership team and their directs before I even started. If they would allow me to do that, have lunch, have a virtual coffee, meet each of them, understand what it is, who they are, how they work, what they're trying to accomplish, how they work with cyber today,
Okay.
right? Um, and have all of that before I go in and build my playbook of this is how we'll do it. And I think that will keep me from working in a silo of, hey, here's what works, before I understand the company.
Okay, thank you. You have said leadership isn't about having all the answers. What does that look in practice when your team expects, certainly from the security function?
Sure. So here's the most important part of that. If somebody is expecting certainty, you haven't done your
Yeah.
job well. Um,
Amen.
but here's the deal: is many people are right expecting that. I had something very simple happen that opened my mind up. I was at a team event, something else, and some guy stopped me in the hallway and blamed me because he failed his
Yeah,
phishing test.
I know how it is.
Um, because yeah, because he said I should have the protections in place, so he should be able to click on whatever he wants. And that was kind of my taste of, do you really walk around believing that? Like, then I'm doing a too good a job saying we're
Yeah.
protecting the company. Right? So I think a level set of certainty doesn't exist, and it also doesn't exist in their function, right? So we need to map that. And one thing I say to people is, you know, look at the stock market, right? Certainty does not
Correct.
exist. Build the tools. Can you work around it? Can you make the best decisions? Absolutely. Are you 100% risk free? Never. Right. And that message is key as a
Yeah.
baseline. Right. So from there, it's really about saying, hey, you know what? I hire people that are closer to these problems than I am.
Yeah.
Right. I trust them to do their jobs. We work together around frameworks to help solve them. And that's how we come up to do our best to meet certainty. But it is a fluid, dynamic situation.
Okay, thank you. Doris, do you have any questions?
Yeah, definitely. So now we're going to get into translating cyber risk into business value, right? So
Yeah.
when we talk about business value, right, what are the three, four main buckets that you have used and repurposed, right, as you're talking to boards in regards to revenue protection, regulatory topics, speed of market, innovation, to have that viable credibility, right? I've been doing this for 19 years, Antonio, and I still have people that don't believe in my credibility, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you see it, because you can make the case on understanding that you're there to better the business, better the organization, better the footprint of what's actually happening current state. So what are the things that you do to map that security work on a day to day to those high level business values to the board and leadership that that make the decisions on money for your programs.
Sure. Yeah. So you touched on some good ones. You said revenue, which is always interesting. And I have learned, tie yourself to how the company makes money, and you will find people listen a lot more. The way I look at it is sales enablement, not revenue protection or anything in that place. But there is a sales engine at your company, and I don't care what it is, whether you are a hospital, whether you are in finance, or whether you work for Caterpillar making machinery, and looking at the security controls that allow those people to do their job, that allow them to stretch further, that allow people to do things that maybe they didn't think they could, right? If your sales team is going to Asia, something of that line, working with them to say, hey, we want to protect you, we want to make sure you're doing well, and really bringing yourself to that side. People like to listen to sales enablement. It's a way for you to get your controls across where people wouldn't normally listen to you. Um,
That's
Go
that's a
ahead.
great
I have
point.
more.
So you basically
Yeah.
just defined GRC,
Yep.
right? GRC driving
Mhm.
the discussions for making decisions on risk, cost, and trust, not a CVSS score or something that's going to have them
Yep.
glaze over, right? I've been in
Mhm.
rooms with executive leadership, talking to them about vulnerabilities and assessments and reports, and they're just looking at you like, what are you saying? Like, what are we doing here, right? So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you called that out. So deep dive into that more as far as translating that in a very finite amount of time, because like you said, you only have like 5-7 minutes to drive your deliverable across to them. So how does that look in practice?
Sure, sure. One thing I really think you want to understand the business dialogue. One of the things that I tell people to do is go read the corporate goals, right? Look at the verbs within the corporate goals. Look at how they're discussing things and how they are managing that. And utilize that in your messaging, utilize that in your conversations, and begin to look at that. So, when I am translating, right, I am thinking about it's something that I will map out, right? But I will say, hey, we have a risk within, X environment. And that isn't something technical. That is, where there's customer data, where there is financial data, where there are critical things, right? This risk, can be, extrapolated easily. It's proven in the wild, right? And here is the potential outcome if that happens. And that outcome has to be a business outcome. Well, we're not working, we're not bringing in revenue, we're not able to report to Wall Street, whatever it is. You tie it to that, and then it's a very simple ask. I am asking for X. I am asking for time. I am asking for a dollar amount, and we will have this resolved by Y. And it's a very simple statement. There is a whole bunch of technical lingo behind it, but they don't need to know any of that. They need to know there's a risk to their environment that will keep them from doing their job.
Definitely. And last question on that topic, right? So, and we were just talking about this off air, right? So NYDFS, one of the requirements to have cybersecurity board related expertise on the board. So have you ever been in a situation where you're translating, you're making that distinction to the board, and then they have a pushback or they have a question for you? You kind of have to think really, easy, fast on your feet to be able to answer those particular questions based on their level of expertise on what set objective and topic you're discussing. Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah, yeah. So in multiple formats, right? So um, there's a couple ways to look at this. Is you need to know who's there. And this was one of the things I did, couldn't be more wrong, right? My first, visits with the board, I just went in there with my metrics and my data, and I was rehearsed, and I had it all together, and I was just giving them a message, and I kind of looked around the room, and I had no idea who these people were. I could have been talking to a CISO, I could have been talking to a CEO, nothing, right? That meeting I thought went well. They didn't ask a single question, which meant it didn't resonate, right? But you know, I've been to others where there were CTOs there. They asked questions to me as a CTO would, not cyber, right? Kind of dissecting it from their view. And I always have a slide or two in the back, or even just notes that has a more granular technical explanation. And that way, if you need to kind of go into that sort of appendix, you can talk about it. But the other thing is, don't ever say, don't ever make something up or give a half statement. If you need to get an answer, that's okay, right? Like that's fine to say, hey, you know what? Excellent point. I will get that from my team. I will have it to you by tomorrow at the end of the business day. Everybody respects that.
True.
Thank you, Alexandra. I'll leave it up to you to have
Okay,
another
I will
question.
take a question on the metric side, metrics and executive reporting that actually work. Show us your top of house dashboard. What are the 5 to 7 metrics you would put on a single slide for the CEO or the board? And what did you intentionally leave off? What you would like to make them to see mostly. Because why I'm saying that, some boards, they're asking to put maybe a slide or maybe 3 slides. If you put more than 3 slides, of course, they are tired. They don't want to listen. They're bored.
You're never going to get through. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's never going to happen. Yeah. 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 So those messages can be different, and that's important. Your executive team and your board are two very different things. So in the CEO's meeting, it may be similar to my board message, but it will be a bit more granular in that I know what I'm saying will affect his direct reports, right? The board, what I'm saying may affect the company, but they're not
Yeah.
operational. They're not working in the
Yeah.
company doing these types of things. Right? So important distinction that I didn't know earlier in my career. I kind of thought the board made every decision. That's not their job. Um, but I look at it as 3 buckets. And I really want to stress from my experience, simplification will help you tremendously. And it's exposure. Where are we most
Yeah.
exposed?
Yeah.
Resilience. How fast
Yeah.
can we recover? And insurance. How confident can we be in that?
Yeah.
Right? And those are the 3 areas that I'm looking at. And I will only have 3 things on a slide, 1 slide. And you can look at things like third party risk, data integrity, outcomes of recovery times in critical systems. And the last one, assurance, I always kind of tap into audit. How are our audit findings? How many do we have versus last quarter? And each of those, I want to show 4 quarters of data. Because if I keep changing those, or if I just show something that is like, hey, here's a new one, doesn't
Yeah.
tell them anything. If I show them over the last quarter that our audit findings are increasing tremendously, there's a story there that they can
True.
see, and then I can give, which may be good. Maybe I'll use that to my advantage for investment, right? So those are the pieces that I'm looking at, and I had a CISO say to me recently, genius guy, say, hey, you know what? What's your favorite board metric? And I said, well, who's your board? Right? Because it isn't that simple. There isn't a great metric, right? It's more about what state is your business in, exposure. What does it mean where you are today? And I think you build metrics around that message. But metrics are overrated, in my opinion. A lot of people don't like to hear
Yeah.
that, and they get angry at me. But I've found that most people don't read them. They kind of glance at them. So to me, it's more about what's the story and what's the message you're trying to convey. There are metrics we use, operationally within the team that are
Yeah.
incredibly important. You know what I mean? We need to know our patching cadence. We need to know all types of things. Like we need to know that to do our job. Outside of our teams, I haven't had tremendous success with metrics. I have done well with the story around the metrics with a very simple number.
Well, Antonio, I mean that's great to hear. I actually was in an organization that there was one metric that defined the entire company's bonus. So you can imagine everyone, everyone being on pins and needles and understanding how important those
Mm,
cybersecurity maturity assessment ratings and scores impacted everyone,
yeah.
right? So, like I said, I never seen that before, and I don't think it's the norm. But some organizations are kind of putting their foot down and driving those metrics. So, I guess that would probably be
Mm,
the antagonist to what you said. Maybe not many people, value the metrics, or we should not place that level of importance. But with that being said, where do you think the risk and the metrics should live, and who should own those, right? Is it the CTO? Is it the CISO? Is it IT, right? And is it based on the verticals and based on what you've seen? Is it a shared responsibility model? Everyone has skin in the game, which is what I seen mostly. But at the same time, depending on the vertical and the
mm,
sector, maybe having area of shared responsibilities being no responsibilities, right? Who's actually on the hook for what? So what are your experiences with that level of back and forth and ownership of delivery on metrics and progress for the organization?
Sure. So I spent about 15 years in consulting, Hewlett Packard, IBM, Deloitte. Uh, I've seen hundreds of companies. I've never seen the metrics done the same way twice, ever. Right? It's all over the board. I think one of the most important, and before I say this, metrics can be religion
Yeah.
in a company, right? So coming in and toying with the metrics and changing it, like you can find yourself in a spot that's not favorable. So, I don't take that lightly. If there is a metric engine that you need to report into, no problem. You do that, right? I think there's an approach that I took to say, okay, that metric, sure, it's valuable. Look at it this way, right? Look at this sort of outcome versus 87%, right? Which you don't, know what it means. Or, stoplights, dear God, we all need to stop
Yeah.
doing stoplights, right? Right? Yeah, what does yellow mean, right? People see green and they're supposed to feel good. So, having those discussions around it can go a long way, but you have to own your own metrics, right? And even if there is an engine, the CT owns them, whatever, no problem, you can own them, right? But this is my business. I'm the CEO of my business, right? And we will report in this way. We will give you whatever you need, but this is how we show that we're healthy. And I think, a CISO or even an individual contributor should take that, be proud of it, and really put a lot into having that message and having something they can display. You said something about who owns things. Even though people own things in the organization, you will find other people that think they own it a lot of the time. One of the things I have found, and I'm going to kind of stretch out here into a slightly bridge topic, is you're almost tapping into who owns risk, right? Um, so, uh, you know, there are organizations that have a chief risk officer, probably more financial organizations, things of that nature. I believe those two things should align. Those messages should align. Those numbers should report up everything else. When I look at cyber as a whole, I have found my biggest and greatest ally to be legal. And if I had my choice, I would have cyber report to the general counsel. They understand the message far better than other organizations. There's a lot of overlap in the work they're doing in the DRC function. And aside from that, people listen to legal, right? So I honestly think that would be a tremendous place for us to take cyber.
100%. And I mean, I've been involved in, instructing and communicating and presenting on risk, right? And usually legal has the final word, or they should have the final word based on cyber insurance communications, sort of breach notifications and disclosures. So that leads me perfectly to my segue to my next question. What's your approach to building that allyship and partnership with legal compliance? And then how does that cascade down to the other areas where you might need a little bit of a extra helping hand to get your points across, right? So perfect segue to that sort of area. And then what have you seen personal in your experiences where that partnership has really paid off?
Yeah, great question. And I think we don't spend enough time here. We spend a lot of time in the tech. And while that's important, um, if that's where we invest our time and resources, that's all we have, right? Um, the last CTO I worked for, brilliant guy. He and I started around the same time at an organization. He spent his first, I don't know what it was, 30, 60, 90 days. He met almost everyone in the company. like even if it was 10 minutes, like he literally made the time to go off and talk to everyone, say hello, this is who I am, what's your job, what's your function. And I saw them adopt him and adopt everything that he was trying to do at a pace that I've never seen before. So I took a big page out of that book and started booking time with leaders. And it's fascinating when I would call people and say, "Hey, let's get together, let's talk." They assumed something was wrong, right? And it made me realize how little we talk to each other. Because I would call them and get on. They were like, "What do you need? What's wrong? What did I do? Your cyber." And I would say, Absolutely nothing. I'm calling you to talk to you about legal or finance or whatever. Understand what you're doing. I'm also calling to say hello." Right? And people would kind of be perplexed, like, why nobody does that? Why would you do that? And it takes a moment where you can have a discussion with people where there isn't something wrong, where there isn't a crisis or these types of things, and you can begin to learn about them and learn about their business. So I think those are the things that are relationship building, and it sounds trivial, but it's the human contact and the human aspect. And being that we are far more virtual now than ever, um, that's
Yeah.
gone, right? There is so little of us bumping into each other in the hallway and getting to know each other. So I think those are the pieces. And, take that and figure out how you can add value. So you've gone to finance, you've learned that what, emails from, whatever their provider is are constantly delayed. They put tickets in, nothing's happening. Go ahead and add a little value and follow up on that. And you will find that goodwill goes a long way from when you are trying to deploy something.
Yeah, that's definitely culture building, right?
Yeah.
And helping the human element part of it that, like Antonio said, many people don't really talk about or just really don't want to delve into. So I really appreciate that. I think if we don't have that level of perspective, put yourself in my shoes, understand where I'm coming from, be a partner, be a good team player. That goes a long way, right? Communication goes a long way, and it's definitely one of those things that I've seen in my career, getting me to where I'm at today, but also just understanding what others are doing and make my job most effective and efficient. So, with that being said, Alexandro, I'll let you handle the next question.
Yeah, sure. Before I'm going to the next question, we have two questions from the audience. One for the past topic, and the other one for the current topic. Would you like to answer to them, Antonio, now or at the end of our session?
Oh, I say we dive right in, right? So I see the
Yeah,
AI
that one
security
I'll put
risk.
on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you
Go
all
ahead.
communicating AI security risk? I'm seeing our engineering partners' budget is increasing, but security isn't. How do we display that we need a budget to show AI security is a value generator?
Great question. I think that's a Texan because it
Yeah.
says y'all, right? So hello to Texas, right? This is as relevant can be. The problem here is education. Um, People are approving, the AI race is on, right? A big, challenge is the vendors are bringing it faster than we can even have the discussions internally. They are bolting in AI agents. People are feeling like they're left behind if they're not utilizing AI. And the engineering teams can. It sounds like where you're going with this question. They can increase 5x, 10x,
Yeah.
whatever it is. They have this capability. So we don't want to slow that down. No, no problem. What we do want people to understand is what the risks are. And one of the things we did at my last company is I did a company-wide session on AI. And honestly, the whole company showed up. I've never seen anything like it. Like I've done them before. I'll get 10 people. I'll get, my friends in the company, something else. Everybody wants in on this. So use that to your advantage. And when I began to explain the risks of hallucination, what I explained what an agent was, and exactly how they're making autonomous decisions, that they are programmed to get things done in a way that other systems are not, and that we may not even understand exactly what they have access to based on their instructions. So those were things that kind of resonated a bit. But there's two things you can do here. Is one, you can explain that risk as a whole. Two, your partnership with engineering is most critical because they need to be bringing you in as they're doing this. And that's your only real way to solve the problem, is that engineering understands that you can help them, you can make them more successful. So those are the pieces I would kind of look at there. And, if you think about, and understand what engineering is doing, frame the risks real world, not hypothetically. If it is hallucination, if it is something the agent is doing we don't understand, give them likely outcomes that focus on what the business is trying to accomplish. You can tie those directly to the goals. You can tie those to the conversations you've had with leaders, and bring about something very real. And not scare tactics or anything like that. That's not
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. Uh, we are trying to say, yes, let's do it, but let's do it securely. And there's lots of companies out now doing amazing things in this space. You guys had Hannah on from
Yeah.
Jordy AI, who's doing
Yeah.
agentic governance, and be doing behavioral modification. So there's lots of people there that can help you. And those folks are also willing to come in and have conversations and give education sessions. So go off and use those people to really help you round that out.
For those who, because here Antonio mentioned about Jordi AI, for those who doesn't know about Jordi AI, I invite them to watch Hannah Darley. We had, in fact, in the past, I think a couple of events ago. And yeah, it is an interesting event, I could say. Now, I would like to go to the next question from another LinkedIn user, where he's saying like this: Mr. Bovoso brought up a great point on stakeholder engagement and knowing who you are briefing so you know how to gain their interest and support towards enabling efforts. It takes time to ingest the formality and operations of a new company. Does he have a process onboarding into new company before having to step into a board meeting? Example, meeting department managers and gaining a quick understanding on their needs, rapport building, or deep diving into metrics immediately once the data is presented or available to you.
All right, so I'm going to answer this question. And does he have a process that he prioritizes as he's onboarding in a new company before having to step into a board meeting? First off, thank you for calling me Mr. Bovoso, but not necessary. There are people who have been in those rooms before you, and I didn't do this, and I didn't even think to do this for a long time. You don't want to learn who's in there, who asks hard questions, who else is going that day, before you get in there. So, a great person to talk to is finance, because you will likely in cyber, if you're going to talk to the board, you will most likely be in front of the audit committee. And the finance and the audit committee are like that. They communicate throughout the year. They go through large audits and come up with findings and go through every detail of the company. They know those directors quite well. So one of the things I did was I asked them, what are you guys presenting? right? Can you show me your past decks? What does it look like? What resonated? And if you ever see a finance deck, it's hilarious because it's just black and white, right? There's no
Yeah.
pictures, there's no nothing. But you understand the level of detail that they have. And that went a long way. So I went off to marketing and said, well, what happens from sales, this area? What are you guys presenting? And sometimes people may say, I can't show that to you. It's not something that can be shared. Sometimes they can give you part of it, but it helps you understand what the broader message is. Public boards, it's pretty easy to figure out who's on most of those. Private ones, with a little digging, you can find out. But you'll be surprised at how helpful other people will be. So, if I started at a new company, my process would be one, who's there? I would research each of their backgrounds, LinkedIn, whatever. I would want to know immediately if one of them had ever been
Yeah.
through a breach. Um, if they have, you will likely be grilled when you get in there. And it also could be an ally, right? Somebody who understands exactly what's going on to help you. From there, I would do the second part that I talked about to understand, hey, who's been in here before? What are we presenting? The day that I am presenting, what else are they going to hear? Am I going in and they've been in there for 7 hours and now I got to come in and give my message and all they want to do is go home, right? And my first, last, whatever it is. And then, once I give my message, what does follow up look like? Right? If I come back again, what's going to resonate? So, and that stuff you can get from other people as well. How did you tailor it over time? Did you give more the first time and then just kind of follow, or were you expected to give kind of these grand messages every time? And those are things you can learn together. The other piece is I would work to educate the board, not in the
Yeah.
session, right? But I would work with whoever it was, the general counsel, or whoever is involved in board education, because they have it, to getting cyber education
True.
to them. Uh, and nothing I would want to give myself. Give them an independent opinion, but you can help coordinate it. And I think that those are the things that I would say week one, I am trying to implement that.
I've been heard not once, maybe a couple of times from different people that are security advisory or even CISOs or SVPA and CISOs as well. Same opinion like yours. I mean, you're not the only person. I am aware of that. I think when we have to educate the employees, means not only our colleagues from the business point of view, or even from the IT point of view or security team, but also the board as well, as you mentioned. I mean, but it's not easy, of course. It's not an easy part. It takes time for everyone to be, let's say, to be educated. I mean, everyone.
Yeah.
It's educated maybe in his own part. Some other people understand fastly. Some other people you have to explain in detail in order to understand that specific thing, how to be done, and so on.
Oh, sure. And that's a really great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's easy to say go
Yeah.
educate the board, right? And everything will be great. Well, not exactly.
True.
So one, there's planes of education, right? User education and board education are
Yeah,
very
exactly.
different things. And the board's job is to govern
Yeah.
the company, right? So you want to give them information that will help them govern, not information that will help them be quote unquote a
Yeah,
user
I
at
agree.
your company. So those are two different things. The other thing is, we're talking about years here. We're not talking about like
Yeah,
I gave them a session and everything was good. You measure over a couple of years of we've been
maybe
working
3,
with
4,
them
or
on a
even 5
couple,
years. Yeah,
whatever it is. And then you have new board members coming in and people leaving. So this is
yeah.
a lifestyle, right? Of going through this, not just something we can do and say, glad we did that. Things are
Yeah.
better now. Right?
Okay, thank you for this. I will go to the next topic: operating model, ownerships, governance, and real trade-offs. Where,
I think we
please.
covered this one
Ah,
already. So
okay, please.
this is a perfect segue, Antonio, for crisis leadership and credibility under pressure, right? So you wrote in a 2 a.m. moment, people don't need a hero, they need clarity. So if you have a scenario where there's an incident or somewhere's happening with a breach or potential situation, what the executive team, the leadership team, the boards want as you're questioning to baseline understanding what's actually happening in real time, what do you do when you have that clear communication? You just alluded to that right now when you're educating them from a governance perspective. How does that look like when it comes to an incident, when it comes to something that must be handled, and it's a really important situation as it relates to cyber?
Yeah, so let's knock on wood, right? And say, I hope this never happens to me or anyone on the call or you guys or anyone ever again, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. So I like to keep this very simple. And I have been guilty in the past of giving way too much information and overloading people that just spawned all these other questions, right? So I kind of look at it as three things. Confirm facts, right? What exactly do we know and don't we know? The business impact, right? Is there business impact? Um, do we know? Do we not know? Right? Containment status, my confidence level around that. Are we in an active scenario where we are not contained, we're still educating, or do we know we are at some level of it? And you may not know that for ages, containment status, right? So that's part of it. But and I've been writing about this. It's interesting you asked. It's what we know, confirmed facts, what we're doing, containment, recovery, investigation, and when will you hear from me next? The last one is the most important part because if you don't set that cadence, right, to say, this is when you will hear from me. If I have something, I will contact you before. Then they know, okay, at 4 o'clock, Antonio's coming back. Otherwise, what happens is you start getting people pinging you from all over the organization. You're going to have other groups of people trying to run it. You're going to have the business doing all these things. But it's clear that I am the communicator, me or whoever it is. And these are the three things that are going to keep us together. Now, behind that is an engine of 9,000 things, and it's crazy, and we're figuring it out, and all these other things. But that's the face of it, and that's how we talk to the people that we're working with. And that's kind of the executive and the board level that I look at. And the executive may even be a bit more granular than that. The board level, it's those three things, and that's it.
There's, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. And Antonio, have you practiced that through tabletops? Like, have you actually put that into practice to kind of engage that real world situation just for everyone to know what you expect from a communicator side, but also from a recipient side of the house as far as what would it look like if you, like you said, knock on wood, we would be in a live fire situation.
I have practiced that in my living room
Okay.
by myself. And literally, like, saying it, because it's hard to simplify. And, we talked about translation a lot on this, and it's hard to do it on the fly, right? Without practice. So, when you're getting your message from whoever's running engineering or whatever it is, it's this long, right? Of like, hey, here's what's wrong, here's what we're doing, here's all these things. Well, I need to get 3 bullets, right? Like, let's figure out how to do that. So, you know, a good thing to do with your own team is, hey, we need to communicate, but here's the planes we need to communicate on, right? Here's the engineering level, right? Here's the management level, here's the executive level, here's the board level. Well, these bottom messages are kind of similar, not the same. These top messages are kind of similar, not the same. And while they're busy fixing things, they don't need to do that. But you need to understand from them, hey, here's the information I need when this happens. So I can go off and give my message. So when you're doing tabletops, right? Don't just do one that reports to a certain person. Do it all the way up the chain, right? To understand, here's the message for engineering, here's the management, here's the CEO's message, here's that. If you give them all the same message, it's not going to work. And I really think that all of us should practice giving that board update. It doesn't have to be to the board. It could be, to each other to say, hey, you're the board. I'm going to give my best shot. You don't know anything about cyber, go ahead. Or find somebody who doesn't know anything about cyber and give them that update. If they don't understand you, then you didn't do it right. So those are the pieces that are kind of critical in how to do it. The other piece is, when you're doing tabletops, when you've got your board somewhat educated, bring them into it. The audit committee or whoever it is, even if it's a subset. Because if you are at a point where the organization, knock on wood, needs to decide if they're paying a ransom or not, this is not the first time you want them to ever be part of this process or understand what it is or understand what it means to decide or not to decide. I also value tremendously that organizations have that decision made ahead of time of what they will or won't do when they're in that situation. And then it's not a matter of let's decide it when we're under a great amount of stress. It's let's unleash the playbook we decided and move forward in that direction.
Should
Excellent
we,
point. Excellent
should
point.
should we go to the next topic, crisis leadership? There's
Yeah, definitely. So going back to that particular situation, right? So when you're communicating to your teams during an incident, right? Especially when the facts are incomplete and you're still kind of like firefighting on the fly, what things have you seen work? What things have you seen don't work that you would not repeat in, like you said, knock on wood, future situations where you might have to be doing the exact same thing from a reporting perspective, from a governance perspective, from a leadership perspective, to the stakeholders, to the board, to the leadership teams. And I think you kind of hit on that, Antonio, but I just want to see, from a real factual perspective of experiences from your side, based on the verticals and sectors you worked in throughout your career, what have you seen, that does work, and what have you seen that maybe not want to do that again?
Yeah, so let's start with what doesn't work because that's always the best, right? And I have most of it has not worked well, right? In the incidents that I've been involved in. While we got through them, great. It's never as clean as a tabletop exercise. There's chaos around the organization and roles and responsibilities as much as you try to define them. It's very easy when something goes wrong to people just start calling the people they know to try to resolve things, right? So I think one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is what's an actual incident, right? At what point do we pull the trigger? And I've not had that defined to the level it needs to be, where you actually go off and pull, well, now we're in a crisis or now we're doing crisis communications versus we're just talking about something that's wrong and it's a break fix, right? So the better you can define that and follow that to the letter of the law, you will find yourself having a much more consistent process because the ones I've been involved in, we were kind of in break fix and then at some point said, hey, we need to switch over. This is a real incident. People are talking to each other, we're not following the process. Well, then you have to get the 20 people that are involved out of it, and that's near impossible, right? So those are the pieces I think that haven't worked. I think for what has worked in that scenario is when we've done preparation. I think most of the tabletops that are done today, and I'm speaking about myself in the past, are really kind of paper exercises. And while it is great to kind of walk through the process and not have it be the first time people have read it when you're in an actual incident, which is a nightmare, try to do something real, right? try to bring in an actual restoration process into it with the IT teams, and bring the business into it and have them kick into BCP, right? And have them do their alternate process while it's down and have that all kind of go. That's the closest you're going to get to real. And it's very different than a tabletop of let's walk through it and see how it goes and this happened. The other thing is, if you are doing tabletops or whatever, bring somebody else in. You might want to do them yourself, but if you can get the budget, go ahead and make sure you're bringing somebody who's well versed in that, and going to hold you to accountable to real world scenarios, and you have no idea what it is, right? And that's where you want to go. And a lot of people think, oh, I really hope I do well in this. I used to think that. Now I hope it's bad, right? Because that means we're going to learn something and we can fix something. So the worse it goes, the better it's going to be for your next stage of the process.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And in my experiences, obviously, I haven't been, at your level, but I always understand that, do not make assertions, do not make claims unless legal has told you to do that and give you the green light to call it a breach, to disclose it as an incident. And I learned that myself directly. So it's really important for everyone to understand, to know that particular area of communications and who should be doing those official communications on behalf of the organization you're working for. So 100% agree. Alessandro?
On my side, I have a question. How do you run a post-mortem so it improves decision making rather than becoming blame and paperwork? I know most of the teams are blaming on this, even security advisories.
Yeah. It's yes, the blame game
Yeah,
is very real. I'm not a fan of it. I think with the blame game, the most important thing is don't take part in it, right? Don't stoop to that level if it ever comes up. But a post mortem can be a couple of different things, right? So, one, there's an internal one that
yeah,
I want to have, right? With me and my team to say, okay, what's our
yeah,
role in this, right? Where did we go wrong, right? Whatever. How did this happen? Not about what happened to the business, not about anything. And trace it back to we were alerted, we get too many alerts and we didn't pay attention, whatever it is, or we had no concept, right? Here's a gap and here's a hole in what we're doing. So those are the most important things as a CISO you can extract out because you now have a way you can better your program. You also now have, a wise person once told me, never
yeah,
waste a good crisis. So you now have a way to say, guess what? Here's a hole and we need budget
yeah,
and here's the proof, right? So those are the things I want to extract out. You also have a post-mortem that aligns with your external partners, meaning, IT, whoever it is, to say, hey, right, cyber, this is what we could have done better, whatever, and our communications broke down. Let's understand where that was. And you can take both of those and make kind of a summary of it all, right? And really understand where the incident went wrong or right from beginning to end. But I think the most important part of it is internal first, and going through that. And you asked a question about what's the process. That's important
yeah,
to define. Otherwise, your post-mortem is just you kind of winging it after you've been through a
yeah,
traumatic experience, right? You want to have that up front. And there's people that have done that very well, right? If you go off and, say how to, Google how to do a post-mortem and an incident response, you'll get 2,000 templates, right? What's most important is that you're grabbing the information out of it and following a defined process versus just getting on a call and it's now a wine session where everybody's upset about what did or didn't happen.
Okay, thank you. Because we have around 6 minutes or 5 minutes to 1 p.m. East time. I will ask a few questions over here, and then we'll close. Of course, I'll let first Durs to address a few questions or one question if he has, and then I'll say my last question.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, Antonio and Alexandro. This is a great session. And I try my best, Antonio, but I have to ask the question: what's the one security investment you think is being overhyped right now, overbought? And we might be having the AI discussion, but I'll leave that up to you. But like you said, it's definitely in everyone's area right now, AI investments. But that's my question, and thank you for the team for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, and the pleasure is all mine, right? So, yeah, it's not AI investments to me, and I'm answering it from a cyber perspective, right? The AI side is being, in my opinion, is being driven by the business, right? Salesforce agents, all these things, agents are coming at us fast and furious, as are other things, as well as people trying to use the technology, Gen AI, whatever it is. So, the AI investments I see cyber making is trying to keep up with that, fire with fire type thing. So some of that is justified. I think on the vendor side, they're calling things AI that aren't, right? So that's a whole nother, we could do a whole podcast on that, right? Or webinar, I should say. When I look at, investments I've made in the past, what's eating up your budget, honestly, I look at the SIM, and how much we're spending on that of our budget versus what we're getting. And I am not bashing the SIM; it is very necessary. But I think we made giant investments in SIM SOAR, kind of thinking it was transformative in, giving us the protections we needed to really run our program. And it's part of it, right? So a lot of that data is stuff we take and make other decisions on and feeds other tools. So I would almost look at that and go, okay, you got a $3 million budget over there, right? Let's investigate that. Could we take a part of that, and go off and bring something new in that's doing, autonomous threat hunting in your environment or something like that, that might add more value. So those are the pieces that I would kind of say, you know what, like, sure, there's new investments, but what are we investing in today? And is that still relevant and appropriate? I actually look at everything that I have every year, and do a re-look at all of my technology. Is it what I need? Is it helping me? Is it priced right? And kind of go from there.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
I will add my last question over here. Antonio, where can people follow your work? And what's one thing you want leaders to do differently this week after hearing this conversation?
Okay, where can people follow my work? Well, I don't put enough of my work out there. So I am do some writing on Medium. You guys are out there. I have a book coming out.
That's nice. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm very bad at promoting.
We're looking forward to have the link where the people they can buy the book.
Yeah. So it will be coming out. I will let you have it. It is called The Boardroom CISO. It is the art of translating cyber risk. And what I did is I wrote the book that I wish I had, as I was working with the boardroom. The one thing that I want leaders to do different, as we're down to our last minute this week, is I want each of you to go befriend your general counsel, and partner with them on your initiatives. And if it isn't them, it's another leader in the organization or somebody reports to them. And really sit down, have lunch, have coffee, and think about how your programs can benefit each other.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonio. Before I will close, I will ask both of you if you can stay a few minutes, and then, of course, I want to inform everyone from the audience. Our next event is on the 23rd of February, same hour, of course, where we'll have a special speaker over there, Bob Fabianzina. For all, please follow us on our website, but as well on the LinkedIn group, where you'll see all the details about our special speaker. Now, I would like to thank everyone for participation, and also to our speaker, and of course to our special co-host. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Antonio.